Welcome to episode 32 of the Living Memory Association podcast, which is a celebration of Halloween and bonfire night in times gone by. From duking, treacle scones and gorilla masks, to unsupervised infernos and the disappointment of only receiving fruit when out guising. Back in time we go.
We used to go round the doors guising. There used to be a wee group of us, 3 or 4 of us would go round together. And I think the best outfit that I ever had for the guising was my mother gave us her fake sort of fur coat, this old sort of coat that she had, and it went with the size of me. It was when I was wee, it went right down to my feet. And then she bought us a gorilla mask and sent us out as a gorilla. Says that'll work. And so that when it did, it was a good one, that.
I'm sure it was.
And it was quick. So my mother liked to do things quickly. So no spend a lot of time on outfits or anything.
We had duking, as we called it. Some people called it other things, but we called it duking. The bath with the apples. Some people had apples hanging from a string on the ceiling with treacle on them, but it wasn't my cup of tea. Of course, there was the guising, going round the doors, and we had a penny for the guy. We would make something out of an old fish box and wheels and put the guy in that and go round tapping on people's doors. Penny for the guy.
And where were you brought up, John?
Royston, Mains. Well, New Haven really, but I mean I was too young to. But say Royston, Mains would be the time when I would be 7 or 8, and that's when the bonfire thing started.
Right.
And everybody came to the bonfire. There was no restrictions. It was in the middle of the street, wherever you could get a space, And there was old pallets and old furniture. Everything was burnt.
Did you spend some time collecting stuff?
Yeah, we went round doors, raking the buckets, getting pieces of wood, anything like that. Yeah, it was just fun days. No health and safety in these days.
And did you have any fireworks?
I didn't personally, because we were quite poor. But there was always somebody there with fireworks. Well, we had the sparklers, but we didn't have rockets or jumping jacks or anything like that. Just, got a sparkler. And then, of course, there was the potatoes put in the fire. You poked the fire and got one out in a stick.
They're a bit charred, usually.
Yeah, a wee bit, yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's all good fun. I mean, I talk to my nephews and now, my nieces and their children, and they don't believe half the things that went on when I was young, I mean, we were talking about the 50s when I was young, and all the things that we did, especially at bonfire time. There's nothing like that, because they've only ever been to something that now is everything's organised, so they've only ever been to that.
And everyone's very concerned about, as you say, health and safety. Do you ever remember anything happening?
Nothing at all. I can never remember anybody getting burnt or anything like that. They just chuck stuff on the bonfire and hope for the best,
Did you have any? Because I know people talked about having rival gangs and rival.
Well, we had
bonfires.
rival the people we were Royston, and of course you had Wardyburn. They'd come and steal stuff off your bonfire, and we'd go and steal stuff off their bonfire. It was all good fun. It was good times.
When I was little, I lived in Achtermachty, a village in Fife, and then when I was 8, I moved to Cooper, a small town in Fife. So that would be the late 40s or the early 50s. Living in a village and a small town, it was absolutely safe for children to go around guising from door to door around the streets without a parent looking after them. So yes, me and my pals, we used to get dressed up. I think they were quite improvised costumes. They weren't anything recognisable. You would just have a sheet, and in fact, for Halloween, sometimes people dressed as a ghost with a sheet completely covering them, and their mother had cut out eye holes and a hole for their mouth so that they could breathe. But then there might be something like pirates or gypsies, but just with scarves and this and that from the house.
Not brought out of the shop or anything?
Definitely not.
No.
There might be a wee bit of makeup involved, like lipstick or soot. Somebody putting soot on their face to disguise them. And sometimes there was an element of you were not supposed to be recognised in your Halloween outfit. Because I remember one wee boy called Neil, who was younger than me, he said people would recognise him because of these 2 big front teeth he had. But of course everybody aged 7 had the 2 new big front teeth growing in. I think he maybe wore a mask sometimes as well. Every door you knocked at, you had to do a turn. Usually it would be a song or maybe a poem, or maybe tell some jokes or something like that. And you would often get money, but it would be pence, it would be pennies, and you would have a tin, either a personal one or a collective one if you were going round with a brother or sister or a pal. And sometimes people would give a little mandarin, tangerine, or a handful of sweets. They might let you pick a couple of sweets from a big tin that they had ready, or they might hand out a little handful into each extended paw.
There was houses you kept away from that you'd never get anything from?
Or if you thought you wouldn't get a good reception, if it was a grumpy person lived there who said, I don't have geysers.
Yeah.
In fact, I seem to remember some windows would have a sign saying no geysers.
You went round the doors and you used to have to do a wee rhyme or a wee song or something to entertain the people that were handing you usually monkey nuts, tangerine, some sweeties, some penny chews and things that you used to get, and then you would just go round each door in the scheme and get your wee bag full by the end of the night. So it was good. It was good fun, the Halloween.
And where were you brought up, John?
I was brought up in Cumnock in Ayrshire, and the other thing you used to get was homemade toffee apples and toffee and tablet.
Ooh.
So that was a good thing. That was a kind of special thing. And you only really got them, I only seem to remember getting them at Halloween. And the same with monkey nuts. They only seem to just appear at Halloween. You had to crack them open.
The duking would be genuinely duking your face into the basin, kneeling on the floor with your face in the basin. As the years went on, it got a bit sanitised, and people used a fork, and they had to hold the fork in their mouth and spear an apple, or sometimes even kneel on a chair with the fork in the mouth and drop the fork down into the basin. But that wasn't half as much fun as getting your face wet, and then you would have to follow the apple with your mouth to the edge so you could get your teeth in. And sometimes, in America they called it apple bobbing because the apples bobbed about in the water. So sometimes your mouth would follow an apple to the side and then it would bob away from you. So then your mouth would follow another apple. So it wasn't very hygienic, I don't suppose. And there were also often nuts in the water, monkey nuts, peanuts in the shells. And if you were being posh, there might even be walnuts and Brazil nuts. If your mum had got a bag of mixed nuts for Halloween. But there were always monkey nuts in their shell. It just added another element to the duking. And sometimes if there was a family dog, the dog would be, his mouth would be in the water as well, looking for an apple.
And then, of course, you went round for the guy, a penny for the guy at bonfire night, and set squibs off. And bangers. You used to get bangers that you used to light and throw. And I mind my father lighting the fireworks in the back garden, and it would be an empty milk bottle that you would put your rockets in, and then he would go and light it and stand back, and then it would go away up in the sky.
There's always the danger that the milk bottle would fall
could have.
over, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm sure they did too at times.
Was there like a bonfire in your street?
Yes, they used to collect all the stray bits of wood and board and hardboard or cardboard or whatever, and all stuff it into the bonfire. And it's just by the garages. Which, when you think about it, it's mad, really. Anyway, that was a bit of waste ground by the garages. So folks' cars would have been, it wasn't that many cars, I suppose, in the days, but there was a couple, But so you used to have a bonfire there.
Did it ever get out of control?
Never. It was never that big. I don't think they never let it be that big. But I don't know. You just stood round the bonfire. I don't remember.
Because John was talking about putting tatties in.
No, I don't ever remember that. No, it was just the bonfire. They set it alight, and it was And you went round folks' gardens to see some of their fireworks, I suppose, going off maybe, and that was about it. It was all the lead up to it too, that you went round and you tried to collect in money for it too, I suppose. Must have bought squibs with it, I suppose.
Yeah.
Was it Catherine wheels?
Oh, that's right.
You used to nail them to the post.
That's it. And sometimes I remember they wouldn't go off.
Yeah.
Or you nailed them too tight and they wouldn't go round.
I lived for the first 5 years of my life in a place called Kincardine on Forth, which is quite near Dunfermline. That was over the bridge in Fife. And then when I was 5.5, we moved to Joppa in Edinburgh.
Right. So that is 60s we're talking
about? That would be the 60s, Miles. That would be right.
So, yes, do carry on with your stories.
Okay, I don't really have a Guy Fawkes memory other than, and this would be in Kincardine, other than sparklers. They're always very entertaining for kids, and being aware that I was told not to touch the sparkler after it sparkled, and of course doing that.
As you do.
As you do. So I do remember the pain of that and thinking, I better not tell anyone because I'll get a row for not doing what I was told.
Bizarre, isn't it?
So that's a sort of Guy Fawkesy memory of before 5. Then in Edinburgh, where we lived, there wasn't much guising, but there was always a Halloween party associated with school or with the brownies, and the memories there were, of course, duking for apples, peeling the apple and throwing the peel over your shoulder.
What was that about then? Was that to ward off something? Or?
No, it was to predict the initial of your loved one.
And did that work for you?
I can't remember if it was M in the end. I don't think I was very good at it, but I'll just tell him it was.
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, of course. How romantic.
Probably be about 6 or 7, and
so 1850s.
Yeah, it was actually. Yes, things are a bit more dangerous then.
1960s.
It was 1960s. Yes, living down in Maidenhead at the time, and my abiding memory of a fireworks night there was getting burnt, hit by a Roman candle, which didn't do what it was supposed to do. But
were you hurt badly then? No.
I got slightly burnt. I got a hole in my jumper. But I can't remember anybody else on that night. I think somebody else actually got hit with the same firework.
Fatalities. So, and then did you remember celebrating? Because you ended up in Galloway, didn't you, living?
Yeah, well, I don't remember so many of our fireworks displays at that point, because it didn't have the same sort of gatherings then, because it lived in a village. But no, things like Halloween were more of a social event with the kids anyway, because living in a village, you took the time to dress up. And on one occasion I remember I went as the Hunchback of Notre Dame, which was very easy because you just stuffed a cushion up the back of your jumper and sort of backcombed my hair, which was longer at the time, which I had hair. And then, yes, you'd start at one end of the village and go down to the other end. But those were the days where you had to have a little performance and a sing-song or whatever, whereas unfortunately later memories of it were people just coming round, standing there and hoping that you were going to give them money, and then being disappointed by giving them a piece of fruit which they probably would never have eaten in the first place. If you get any awkward geysers, just have a bag of tangerines ready.
And then the other treat thing was treacle scones, and they would be, your mum probably made the scones, and they were smeared with probably actual treacle. It might have been golden syrup, but the real treacle was black, And when I was a child, we dangled it just from a string, that rough string across the kitchen. But when my own children were little, we still have a big pulley in the kitchen, and we dangled them from the pulley and then jiggled the pulley up and down to make it harder to catch the scone. And sometimes the scone would spin around on the string, and so it would be all over your cheeks and your nose and your hair and your forehead, and you had to try and get a bite at it. Occasionally, if you bit it too near where the string had been threaded through, it would all fall to pieces round about.
Sounds like a messy old business to me.
And the other one that I really liked, although obviously completely would be unacceptable now, was eating scones that were dipped in treacle that were then suspended on a string and suspended over I suppose newspaper or something, and having to eat that with your hands tied round your back and getting totally covered in sticky treacle. But I did quite enjoy that in some strange way. And of course, carving the turnip lantern.
Oh, nobody's mentioned that.
Yeah,
Good.
Turnip lanterns, and they were very difficult, and the smell that would linger, which seemed to take a couple of days to empty out a turnip, really, when we were wee. We never had a pumpkin. That's modern.
That's right. It was, yeah.
The big orange pumpkins. So yeah, it was always a turnip lantern, which were quite
because
good
they're
fun.
hard, aren't they? Turnips?
So completely solid, and yeah. So the turnip lanterns were quite good, and they always looked much scarier, I think, than pumpkins, which are more regular shape.
Yeah, that's true.
But turnips tend to be a bit squishy and bashed, and you can create a much more evil face.
Okay, bonfire night, 5th of November. Remember, 5th of November. Of course, the Scottish term guising, it wasn't to do with a guy, as in Guy Fawkes. It was to do with disguising yourself, dressing up. But sometimes there was a communal bonfire, like on a village green or something like that. And in the days ahead of it, people would add stuff like old broken chairs and things. And it was often quite a volatile pile by the time bonfire night came round. And it would be lit, and sometimes it would be quite spectacular. You know, the flames would go up through the sort of hollower centre and into the sky. And sometimes people would put raw potatoes in the fire to bake them. And I don't remember them being wrapped in foil or anything posh like that. I think they were just placed in the embers and then raked out with a stick and burn your fingers as you were trying to take the charred skin off it and get at the potato inside. And sometimes it wasn't cooked all the way through. Ditto with sausages. If people sharpened a stick and held a sausage in the flame, the outside was charred and very, very hot, and the inside was a bit pink. And bonfire night, of course, you had fireworks, and there wasn't, in my memory, often a real display, fireworks display. It was more often personal fireworks in your garden. And in the days or 2-3 weeks before Guy Fawkes Night, children would go into toy shops, usually had fireworks in a glass case, or maybe not in a glass case in those days, maybe just loose on the counter on a big tray, and you could buy them for a few pence. And latterly they introduced the idea that you had to have an adult with you when you bought them, because I remember once my mum foolishly went into a shop with me, a toy shop, and we were looking at the fireworks and we were choosing, and this wee boy came in on his own and wanted some, and the shop lady said, you can't buy them, you have to have an adult with you. And he was so forlorn that my mum, taking pity on him, said, I could be his adult. I could say he's with me. But quite rightly, the toy shop lady said, but will he be with you when he's setting them off? And of course he wouldn't. I think she just spoke impulsively. You know, when she thought about it, she realised
yeah, that could be dangerous ground, couldn't it? That?
Yeah. But the fireworks she bought, there would definitely be rockets. They would be saved for last in your own little garden display. And they would be set in a milk bottle to be lit, likely to shatter. And they always said, light the touch paper and stand well back. So, of course, sometimes the touch paper fizzled out, but it was often your dad that was doing the lightings. He would go back and investigate after a short period of time. But we also had Roman candles, and there was silver stream and golden stream, and what else? There were crackerjacks, jumping jacks, I think they were called, and it was like a sort of folded little firework, folded zigzag, so that when it lit, it did zigzag about the back garden. Because I remember my daughter, when she was just wee, she was a bit scared of the whole idea of fireworks, and this jumping jack was lit and it zigzagged towards her, but instead of stepping back into the back door, she went into a corner and the crackerjack followed her into the corner. And the following bonfire night, she watched from her bedroom window. She wasn't very happy about that. And we had some that were just called bangers, and they didn't light up at all. They just gave a terrific bang.
Yeah.
And then the rocket would be the final one.
What about sparklers?
Oh, sparklers, yes. And of course, children were allowed to hold them. Sometimes you put a glove on, or you were advised to wear a glove and hold them. And you could wave your arm about and make pictures with the sparkly. And you could get different prices. The cheap ones only lasted half a minute or something. But the longer ones, more expensive ones, they lasted much longer. And then when it did fizzle out, you had to be careful how you disposed of it, because if you touched the end that had just gone out, it would take the skin off your fingers. It was still very, very hot.
Thank you so much to Evelyn, the two Johns, Joyce and Mark for their wonderful memories of Halloween and Guy Fawkes Night. If you have a story to share, please pop in to see us at the Wee Museum of Memory on the second floor of Ocean Terminal in Leith. You can also visit our Facebook page to keep up with our regular events and view our wonderful photo videos and much more on our YouTube channel just by searching for the Living Memory Association. We also have a brilliant website at www.livingmemory.org.uk hosting over 3,000 photos in conjunction with Edinburgh Collected. If you've enjoyed this podcast, our further reminiscence and music shows Life Story, Leith Lives, Forgotten Songs from the Broom Cupboard and Analogue Rory's Jukebox can all be accessed from the Projects tab on our website or via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Until next time, we bid you farewell.